It was a cold December night in 1968, the kind of quiet that feels heavier than silence, when even the air seems to wait for something to happen. Out on Lake Herman Road, two teenagers sat in a parked car, talking softly beneath the glow of a winter moon. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, a date, a conversation, maybe a kiss before going home. Then, headlights. A car approached slowly, stopping just behind them. No words, no warning, just a figure stepping out. And in an instant, the night exploded. Gunshots shattered the stillness. The peace of Benicia, California, was gone, and from that moment forward, fear had a name, one that would soon haunt an entire state: the Zodiac. He wasn't just a killer, he was a storyteller. A man who turned murder into a performance and fear into his signature. The Zodiac didn't simply take lives, he took control. He wrote letters to the press, taunted detectives with puzzles, and watched as California trembled at every word he sent. Each letter began the same way. "This is the Zodiac speaking." A greeting that felt more like a declaration of power. He gave himself a name, a symbol, even a voice. And in doing so, he created a myth that no one could contain. As the world watched, law enforcement scrambled, newspapers begged for answers, and ordinary people started to wonder if the man sitting next to them might be him. The Zodiac wasn't just out there, Hugh. He was everywhere. And long after the killing stopped, his shadow never did. California, 1968. A state pulsing with change. The streets echoed with the chants of protesters demanding peace while soldiers boarded planes for a war few believed in. The summer of love had come and gone, leaving behind both liberation and disillusionment. San Francisco was alive. Music in the parks, color on every corner, and rebellion in the air. But beneath the free spirit of the era, there was tension. The optimism was cracking. Cities were growing restless and trust in authority was fading fast. In that chaos, the Zodiac found his perfect stage, a place where people were too distracted to see the darkness creeping in, where one man could exploit both the media as hunger for drama and the public as growing fear of the unknown. He emerged at a time when the world was already uncertain, and he used that uncertainty as his weapon. The age of love and freedom was about to meet the face of terror. The Zodiac's story began, as many dark tales do, with two young lives cut short before their time. On December 20th, 1968, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen drove out to Lake Herman Road, a quiet lover's lane on the edge of Benicia. They never made it home. 10 bullets fired in less than a minute ended what should have been an ordinary night. No witnesses, no suspects, only tire tracks, shell casings, and silence. For months, police had nothing. No motive, no pattern. It was violence without reason, until it happened again. On the night of July 4th, 1969, another young couple sat in their car at Blue Rock Springs Park. Just after midnight, a vehicle pulled up beside them. The driver fired several shots before driving away, only to return moments later and shoot again. Darlene Ferrin died at the scene. Michael Mageau survived. Barely. Hours later, a call came to Vallejo police. A calm male voice confessed, giving details only the killer could know. Then, almost casually, he said, "I also killed those kids last Christmas." 2 attacks, 7 months apart, linked by the same words, and the same cold precision. The police now knew they weren't dealing with random violence. They were facing something deliberate, something planned. The beginning of a game that the Zodiac would soon force the entire state to play. It began with envelopes, 3 of them, delivered to the offices of major newspapers across the Bay Area in the summer of 1969. Each one contained a message typed with precision and menace, signed not with a name, but with a strange crosshair symbol that would soon become infamous. Inside were detailed confessions of the murders, and with them, a challenge. Each letter carried 1/3 of a cryptic cipher that, when solved, the Zodiac claimed, would reveal his identity. But there was a catch. He demanded that all 3 newspapers print his letters on the front page, or he threatened to cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night. This was no ordinary killer. He wasn't hiding. He was performing. He wanted fear to spread, and he wanted the world to listen. His writing was cold but theatrical. The spelling was erratic, the tone smug, almost playful. He mixed arrogance with calculation, switching between taunts and riddles. Psychologists would later say his letters revealed a man who craved recognition, a narcissist who saw murder as communication. The phrase, "This is the Zodiac speaking," wasn't just an introduction. It was a declaration of dominance. He was introducing a persona, a brand of terror that no police department could silence. As his words filled the front pages, California began to change. The Zodiac had entered the conversation, and he wasn't about to leave it. The Zodiac didn't just kill. He communicated through puzzles, as if daring the world to understand him. Each cipher he sent was more than a message. It was a psychological trap, designed to both confuse and entice. The first one, known as the Z408 cipher, was cracked within a week by a high school teacher and his wife. It revealed no name, no direct confession, only a chilling statement of purpose. "I like killing people because it is so much fun," it read. To him, murder wasn't just an act. It was a form of art, a way to feel alive by taking life from others. But the second major cipher, the Z340, was different. Sent to the San Francisco Chronicle in November 1969, it contained 340 characters of chaos, symbols, letters, and patterns that seemed to make no sense. For decades, it taunted everyone who tried to solve it, from amateur cryptographers to the FBI's best code breakers. Every theory led to another dead end. Every possible key broke apart halfway through. It wasn't until more than 50 years later that a small team of private codebreakers finally cracked it, revealing a message as unsettling as ever. In it, the Zodiac mocked law enforcement once again, insisting he wasn't afraid of capture and that his victims had enough fun. Even when the meaning was finally clear, the identity behind the words remained hidden. The ciphers weren't meant to reveal who he was. They were meant to remind everyone that he could not be caught. For the Zodiac, control was the real prize. And as long as people were still trying to solve his puzzles, he was still winning. As the Zodiac's letters flooded newspaper offices, California slipped into a quiet panic. His words weren't just read, they were felt. Every headline seemed to echo his voice. Every new cipher reignited the same question. Who could he be? People began to see the Zodiac everywhere. Strangers at bus stops, men in parked cars, a co-worker who spoke a little too calmly about the murders. Suspicion became part of daily life. Parents refused to let their children walk home from school. Couples stopped driving out to quiet roads. The freedom that once defined California's nights vanished under the weight of fear. The media, caught between responsibility and survival, became his unwitting accomplice. Every taunt, every symbol, every letter he sent was printed, discussed, and dissected on air. The Zodiac had discovered something powerful, that terror could be amplified through ink and radio waves, and he used it with precision. Schools canceled field trips. Police hotlines rang nonstop with false leads. Citizens armed themselves, convinced the killer could be their neighbor. And through it all, the Zodiac watched unseen, feeding on the chaos he'd created. He didn't need to strike again to control the city. His words did the killing for him. California wasn't just afraid of a murderer. It was haunted by a presence that lived in every newspaper column and every whisper after dark. The Zodiac had become something far larger than a man. He was a myth wrapped in fear, and no one could stop reading his story. As the killing slowed, the search for the Zodiac turned into an obsession. Detectives, journalists, and amateur sleuths all chased the same question. Who was he? But with every lead that looked promising, another contradiction emerged. One name stood out above the rest: Arthur Lee Allen. He was intelligent, short-tempered, and fascinated by codes. He owned the same kind of watch that bore the Zodiac S symbol, a crosshair encased in a circle. He lived near the crime scenes and even told friends that killing people would be the ultimate thrill. For investigators, it felt like the puzzle was finally coming together, but it didn't. Alan's handwriting didn't match the Zodiac's letters, and his fingerprints failed to connect. When DNA testing later became possible, it ruled him out entirely. The man who seemed like the perfect suspect was, at least officially, innocent. Then came others. Richard Gaikowski, a journalist with ties to the Good Times newspaper, known for his cryptic writing and erratic behavior. Some claimed his voice matched the Zodiac's, while others dismissed it as coincidence. There was Lawrence Kane, whose memory lapses and proximity to the victims made him another compelling name. And Rick Marshall, a projectionist who loved ciphers and owned machines capable of reproducing the Zodiac's symbols. Each suspect had pieces of the truth, but none fit perfectly. Every clue contradicted the next. Every theory collapsed under scrutiny. In the end, the Zodiac remained untouchable, as if mocking everyone who tried to unmask him. The investigation became a hall of mirrors, reflections, guesses, and ghosts of men who might have been monsters. But the real Zodiac? He stayed just out of reach, hidden behind the very mystery he created. Even as the murders came to an end, the Zodiac's voice refused to fade. His letters kept coming, sometimes months apart, sometimes years. Each one carried that same eerie confidence, that same calculated detachment. It was as if he enjoyed watching investigators chase his shadow while he stayed one step ahead. In 1970, he claimed responsibility for more victims, boasting that his count had climbed to 37. None of those supposed killings could ever be confirmed, but the arrogance behind his words was unmistakable. He taunted the police for their failures, ridiculed the press for their desperation, and reminded California that he was still out there, watching. And then there were the sightings. People across the Bay Area reported strange men lurking near schools, phone booths, or remote back roads. Some claimed they saw the Zodiac's symbol scrawled on walls, while others received letters that mirrored his style. Each report stirred the same unease. Maybe he never stopped, maybe he simply changed form. Even the tone of his later letters shifted. They became darker, more fragmented, as though he was growing restless or unraveling. But whether those later writings truly came from him or from imitators chasing infamy, no one could say for certain. The truth was hauntingly simple. The Zodiac didn't need to keep killing to stay alive. As long as his letters surfaced, as long as his name appeared in headlines, his power endured. He had built a mythology that no handcuffs could contain. For the people of California, silence was never comforting, because silence could mean two things. Either he was gone, or he was watching quietly, waiting to speak again. From the beginning, the Zodiac investigation was chaos wrapped in confusion. Each police department worked the case their own way, Vallejo, Napa, San Francisco, each with its own evidence, its own theories, its own frustrations. There was no central coordination, no unified command. What should have been one hunt became several small ones, often running in circles. Detectives chased hundreds of leads. They interviewed suspects, tested handwriting, analyzed ciphers, and compared fingerprints by hand. Every new clue seemed promising. A footprint here, a tire tread there, but none of it ever fit together. The killer seemed to vanish between jurisdictions, slipping through the cracks created by bureaucracy itself. One officer would later admit that key evidence may have been lost or overlooked simply because departments didn't share information. In an era before digital databases and instant communication, time was the enemy. By the time a suspect's name reached one city, the trail had already gone cold in another. And then there were the mistakes. Fingerprints mishandled, letters delayed, witness statements forgotten. Not out of negligence, but exhaustion. The Zodiac's taunts weren't just aimed at the police, they worked on them. He turned the investigation into a psychological maze where every wrong turn deepened the frustration. Years passed, detectives retired, and new ones picked up the case, each convinced they might be the one to finally break it open. But the Zodiac had built something too big, too tangled. His crimes weren't just unsolved, They were unresolvable. Every dead end became part of the myth. And somewhere in that mountain of files, hidden behind the red tape and the missed opportunities, the truth might still be waiting, just beyond reach. Decades after the last confirmed killings, the Zodiac case found new life, not in newspapers but online. Internet forums and true crime communities dissected every letter, every clue, and every photograph. Amateur detectives shared theories, compared handwriting, and even tracked down old witnesses. What was once a local obsession became a global fascination. Advances in DNA testing added another layer of hope. Investigators began re-examining envelopes, stamps, and preserved evidence, searching for the smallest genetic trace that could finally point to a suspect. Every new analysis was met with excitement, only to dissolve into disappointment when results failed to match known suspects. Then came claims of unmasking the Zodiac. Names circulated, theories went viral, and some even claimed definitive proof. Yet with each revelation, one thing remained constant. None could be fully verified. The Zodiac's identity remained elusive, his myth intact. And perhaps that was the point. For more than 50 years he had taught us a lesson. The line between truth and obsession is thin, and the closer we get to the answer, the more the shadow of the unknown stretches. The Zodiac may never be caught, but the hunt, and the fascination, shows no sign of ending. The Zodiac was never just a man with a gun or a pen. He was something far more insidious, a reflection of fear itself. In the quiet towns of California, in the bustling streets of San Francisco, he forced people to look at the darkness they often ignored. He turned ordinary nights into exercises in paranoia, and ordinary words into instruments of terror. Decades have passed. The murders, the letters, the ciphers, all of it belongs to history now. And yet his name still carries weight. It lingers in conversations, in books, and in the minds of those who study him. Every unsolved letter, every unsolved cipher, every suspect dismissed too soon, serves as a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be tamed. The Zodiac's shadow has not faded. It moves quietly, wrapped in stories, speculation, and fear. And perhaps that is the true legacy he sought. Not merely to kill, but to be remembered, forever lurking in the fog, waiting for the next person to wonder, what if he's still out there? The legend endures, the questions remain, and California, along with the rest of the world, continues to hold its breath.